pulled the remaining foreskin back, what's now called restoration. They pulled the remaining foreskin back and clipped it actually in front so as to have a normal-looking penis again. In order to stop them from doing that, the rabbis then instituted a second phase they called priya, which meant removing the rest of the foreskin and removing it, a much more radical procedure. It's important to understand that because the kind of circumcision that is performed in Jewish ritual is essentially identical to what is done in the United States. This very radical and very destructive kind of circumcision in which practically all of the foreskin is removed. Circumcision became the major symbol of difference for Christians between Judaism and Christianity. This dates back to Paul's letters, Galatians, Corinthians, and others. He says specifically there that circumcision does not matter.
It was so amazing to me when I worked in the hospital. And my first question would be, I see that you're going to have the baby circumcised. And may I ask why you've chosen circumcision for your baby? And they would say, oh, because I'm a Christian. And I said, do you know that there's 120 references to circumcision in the New Testament? Circumcision is of no value. If you're a Christian, you don't live by outward signs. You live by faith expressed through love. Christ was the last to shed the blood. He was the ultimate blood sacrifice for everybody. We don't need to do this again. Oh, I didn't know that.
People are not just Christians, they are Americans, and circumcision is an American procedure.
They're practicing something because they consider they're this, without ever really understanding what that means.
The next question that we come to is, how in the world did this get to become an American custom? In Victorian England in the late 19th century, there was already well embedded the belief that masturbation was a particularly dangerous business. That loss of semen would weaken a child permanently, might give him all kinds of sickness. They said, we can stop this very dangerous habit by performing circumcision.
We know that circumcision began in England to prevent masturbation.
Masturbation was seen as this horrible thing that could cause all kinds of diseases and insanity.
And that just took hold. You know, we are a fairly prudish culture.
And it sounds crazy to us today, but in those days, this was accepted.
Doctors in the 1860s and 1870s claimed that this would reduce the child's sexual sensation. But then in the 1960s, it began to disappear as an idea. Can you guess why? Because the sexual revolution made having sexual pleasure permissible for the first time, basically, in American culture. And so all of a sudden, the meme, the theme that you were damaging your child sexually was no longer good advertising. So it just simply went, bing, it disappeared. And now if you talk to physicians, they will claim utterly that circumcision is not sexually damaging, that it's sexually neutral, and that there's no harm in it. And they forget entirely the medical history they have in their own occupation that claimed exactly the opposite for over 100 years.
Currently, the benefit to risk ratio of circumcision is 14 to 1. That means there's 10 times the risk you're going to get a urinary tract infection as a baby, that you'll have a lower risk of HIV, less human papillomavirus. So when you add all those up, there's 14 benefits, some of them life-threatening.
These claims are irresponsible, and it's a scare tactic.
I don't think there's a lot of evidence for benefits. And even if there were some benefits, this is a radical solution. Major claims require major proof. When you make a major claim, and it is indeed a major claim that we doctors can improve upon the human body by removing organs, you've got to show me major proof.
Medical justification for this is a very interesting subject in itself because it shifts over the decades from one topic to another. Usually it's the disease that is most of interest at the moment that circumcision is claimed to be, quotes, good for. It began, of course, with cancer, the obvious.
Well, penile cancer is a rare disease of elderly men.
The likelihood of any particular man ever getting it in his lifetime is very slim. Those who do get it tend to be elderly and often have very poor hygienic practices, homeless men and so on. Nonetheless, the claim became popular that if we circumcise infants, we will be, quotes, protecting them from this terrible disease.
Then in the 60s, they said, now we've come to the sexual revolution, and they said, oh, circumcision will prevent sexually transmitted diseases. Well, it didn't work. It has never worked. We have a high rate of all of them in America, as you know, where most men are circumcised, so that's ridiculous.
But just as soon as one claim disappears, the next one appears. For a while, it was urinary tract infections, UTI.
Well, girls get UTIs. What do we do?